In this lesson, we're going to start setting up a scene to render our steering wheel. Whenever we start talking about scenes, we want to make sure that we turn on perspective. If you're doing realistic renders, it's important that perspective is on or that you're using cameras for your scenes. We want to go to our Tools dropdown, Add-ins, and turn on Photo View if it's not already on. For our scene, we can go ahead and add a camera by going to our View dropdown, going to Lights and Cameras, and adding a camera. The view on the right-hand side of the screen is what the camera sees. The view on the left-hand side is for our positioning of our camera. So you'll notice that you can simply drag the endpoints of your camera to get it into place where you want it. If we look in the properties for our camera, we have some options. The camera type can be aimed at target, for instance, such as this, or it can be floating. We can show numeric controls if we want to give it coordinates, or we can lock the camera position except when editing. We want to make sure that the camera position is locked except when we're editing its position. We can select a point on our model to target, and this is important if you're doing an animation. We can position by selection. We can give the camera a rotation. For instance, if we start to drag this bar, you can see that the camera is twisting in our left-hand section. In the right-hand section, you can see what that's doing to our view. We're going to put 0 degrees in the box. The field of view section is our perspective. For instance, we have an 11.79 field of view right now. If we drag this out, you can see we're going to get a little bit more distortion on our camera. We're going to drag this in a little bit closer to the model. We have options for depth of field. If we select the depth of field options, you get a preview of some clipping planes. We can adjust these clipping planes by using the control wheels inside the properties. By holding down the control key, you'll get a much larger resolution of the snap. The darker plane is going to be the point of focus for your camera. The two lighter planes are going to blur the image of everything that's outside this. This won't be a straight transition, but you'll notice that the focus in the center of the screen will be a lot better than the extents of your part. This is more important when you're dealing with larger images, for instance, large machinery, cars, or even buildings. For now, we're going to use depth of field and we're going to keep that on. So let's hit OK. The next thing we want to talk about, the photo view options, and taking a look at what we can do to set up our image sizes. We're going to look at our render quality. The preview quality we want to set typically pretty low. That'll give us a much faster preview when we're looking at our renders. The final render quality you want to set pretty high. We have the option for bloom. We also have the option for direct caustics, which will be important with us when we're dealing with these plastic materials. And you have contour rendering, which allows you to do a line render of all the curves in the side of your model. For now, we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And let's take a look at some of our available scenes. We can edit scene from our photo view dropdown. We get a preview on the right-hand side of what those scenes are. We have 3-point blue, 3-point faded, 3-point green, and so on. We have an ambient white backdrop. We have some of these black with fill and gray with overhead lights. And notice the selection at the bottom. This is going to be our top plane. So everything that we're looking at is in the correct orientation. As you get farther down the tree, you'll notice that there are a few other options for scenes. Right now we're looking at basic scenes, but we have some studio and some presentation scenes we can use. Let's take a look at the studio scenes. We have some reflected floor options, our factory floor, dusty antique, misty blue, and so on. When you get down to the bottom, you'll notice that there are a few light options. If you're dealing with curvature on plastic surfaces, a lot of times it's nice to see traffic lights or grill lights and how they reflect off of your images. We also have some presentation scene options, such as a kitchen background, a courtyard, a factory, and an office space. For our purposes, let's go with a basic scene, and let's take a look at black with fill lights. Once I hit OK, I'm going to go to my photo view and take a look at our preview. Depending on the speed of your computers, the preview can take anywhere from a few seconds to several minutes, depending on your quality settings. So it's important that you set those quality settings fairly low so you don't have a lot of time to wait. Another tip is to make your preview window smaller. The smaller the preview window, the less the rendering has to do. So you can see that our image is actually offset to the right-hand side with our camera, but the image looks fairly good. With the exception of the light, it's fairly dark in the scene and it's really hard for us to see detail. So from our drop-down option here, I'm going to select a much lighter scene, such as plain white. That'll give us a little bit better idea of our curvature, but we are dealing with black parts, so maybe we need to add some lights in the scene and take a look at what that'll do to our geometry. From our view option, we're going to go to lights, and we're going to add a spotlight. We're going to look at this from the top, and we want the spotlight to be shining on the front of our part. If we look at it from the side, we actually want to create some shadows, so we're going to shine down from the top, making sure that we shine close to the center of our part. You have options on the left-hand side in the properties. In the basic tab, there's on in SolidWorks. In the photo view tab, you have to select on in photo view or it won't appear in your render. There's also a great option to apply some fog. Again, this is more important when you're dealing with larger objects such as cars, buildings, and large machinery. For now, we're going to leave all these settings the same. We're going to turn the fog on and hit OK. From our view dropdown, we want to go to our camera and we want to do another preview. So we can see from our preview that it's giving us a little bit better idea of our geometry, and we actually have the fog and a little bit of distortion on the side. So everything's looking pretty good. We get a shadow behind our part and we can see all of our geometry. The one last thing I want to do is center the camera up, and I'm going to turn that distortion on from our clipping planes. So from our view dropdown, go to cameras, properties, and I want to change camera 1. We're going to turn off our depth of field option. And from our left-hand screen, I want to make sure that we rotate things around so that our steering wheel is centered. Hit OK. We're going to save the model. That concludes setting up our scene.